Every sheriff's deputy at this office came back to work. They did not want to spend Christmas with their families while this little girl was still missing.
At approximately 4 p.m. this afternoon, a ground search crew in the area of Melson Road, just west of Hamden Court, located the body of 11-year-old Sarah Foxwell.
Christmas is supposed to be the happiest time of year, a time of cheer and joy, and a time when families come together to celebrate. And that's what the people of Wicomico County expected for their Christmas of 2009 to be. But tragically, something happened that turned the joyous season into a horrible nightmare.
It was Christmas Day. That was our Christmas. It was tough. I mean, it just hurt us all. And I felt like we had failed.
This is the case of the 11-year-old girl that was snatched from her bed by a pervert killer. Sarah Haley Foxwell, or Haley Bug as her family fondly called her, was described as a sweet, bright, and outspoken 11-year-old girl who lived in Wicomico County, Maryland. Born on May 18, 1998, she was the middle child in a large family of 9 children, and according to her mother, Jennifer Foxwell, Sarah was always the referee, the lover, and the hugger in the family, and always had a smile on her face no matter how bad her day was. Growing up, Sarah and her siblings had a really tough life. Their mom, Jennifer, who was a single parent, would often get overwhelmed and go on a bender, leaving the kids to fend for themselves. This led to the children being temporarily placed under the care of their aunt and Jennifer's sister, Amy Fothergill, in 2008.
I was going through a really rough patch in my life, and I chose to place my children with my family because it was in their best interest, really, to be there. I couldn't properly care for them at the time, and it was the best place for them to be. I knew they were loved. I knew they were taken care of. They had what they needed, wanted, and they were happy there.
At the time, the authorities and other family members thought that Sarah and her siblings would be much safer living with their aunt in her converted farmhouse. But sadly, they were mistaken. On December 22nd, 2009, Sarah, who was 11 at the time, was really excited about Christmas. She was running around the house with her siblings, laughing and goofing off. After having pizza for dinner, the children went to bed at 9 p.m. wearing their Christmas pajamas. Sarah was sharing a bedroom with her 6-year-old sister Emma, and the room was at the end of the hallway beside the back door. As the 2 girls playfully skipped to bed that night, no one would have imagined that it would be the last time that Sarah would ever be seen alive again. The next morning, the family was shocked to find Sarah missing from her room. They searched everywhere, in and around the house for her, but they could not find her. The weather was freezing outside, so there was no way she could have just walked out, especially since her jacket and shoes were still in her room. Sarah's mother, Jennifer, was working overtime when she received the distressing call from her sister, Amy, telling her that her 11-year-old girl was missing. She would later say that the moment she heard this, she knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. The family then called the sheriff's department, who immediately abandoned everything they were doing to come search for the little girl.
Every sheriff's deputy at this office came back to work. They did not want to spend Christmas with their families while this little girl was still missing.
A desperate search for Sarah immediately began, with the police checking around the house for any sign of forced entry, but there was none. The front door and all the windows were still intact. However, when they checked the back door, they were shocked to find the door unlocked. At that moment, Sarah's aunt Amy remembered that they had a key hidden somewhere in the garden for emergencies, but when she went to check, the key was not there. She also noticed that Sarah's green toothbrush was also missing from the bathroom, and immediately knew that someone had taken their little girl. Someone who knew about the key and where Sarah was sleeping. Someone they had invited into their home. A statewide Amber Alert was issued for Sarah as thousands of volunteers combed through the area searching for the little girl. Meanwhile, as the police were trying to figure out who had taken Sarah, a terrified Emma was watching by the sidelines, trying to gather the courage to tell what she had seen. And then she pulled her grandmother aside and told her that she knew who had taken Sarah. Apparently, when the girls were sleeping, 6-year-old Emma was awakened by a man standing in their room and talking to their sister. Scared, she pretended to be asleep and saw the man taking her sister out of the room. Emma later described the man in detail, saying that he was wearing blue jeans, an orange jacket, and white sneakers. But what was even more chilling, she said that she recognized the man because he had been to their house several times. It was Mr. Tommy. The Mr. Tommy that Emma was talking about was actually 30-year-old Thomas Leggs, an ex-boyfriend of their Aunt Amy. Amy told the police that Thomas knew about the emergency key in the garden and the bedroom that Sarah slept in. While the two were still dating, Thomas would frequently visit the house and interact with the children. But since their breakup a month ago, Amy said that she hadn't heard anything from him. With this information, investigators immediately checked their records to see if they had anything on him, and what they found was totally horrifying. It turns out that Thomas was actually a sick perv who had a twisted fascination for young girls. He had been arrested and convicted multiple times and was even a registered offender in both Maryland and Delaware. In fact, the registry in Delaware described his risk level as high and noted that he was unemployed. In 2001, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for reportedly violating a teenage girl. However, he only served 6 months of the sentence before he was released on parole for good behavior. Then, just a few months before Sarah's kidnapping, he was arrested again for assaulting a young woman in her home. The woman told the police that he broke into her home through a window at 4 a.m. and was standing over her bed undressing when she woke up. He was actually out on bond when the incident with Sarah happened. Amazingly, Sarah's aunt allegedly knew about Thomas's history early in their relationship, but he somehow managed to convince her that he was not a bad guy and that he was not in his right mind when he did all those things, but he was okay now. And she actually believed him and let him into her life, not knowing she was letting in a monster. The police were able to find Thomas in a shed where he lived on his parents' property, but when they questioned him about Sarah's disappearance, he completely denied having anything to do with it, claiming he was at a bar with a friend when the incident happened.
What was your relationship with the girls? I mean, did they like you? We
all seem to get along great. Try to be very cautious around the younger girls because of my past and everything else, just so there's no mistakes. I don't be alone with them or anything like that. And which, if you talk to Amy, she should be able to confirm I was never alone with them whenever we were together.
When he asked why Emma would point a finger at him, he actually claimed that the 6-year-old was a troublemaker and was making things up. Although the police did verify that Thomas was indeed at a local bar sometime that night, they could not confirm his whereabouts between 1 a.m. to 7 a.m., which is the time when Sarah was taken. When the police checked his phone records, they found that he had texted several women trying to get them to meet up with him, but they all refused. Then, when the police searched his gold pickup truck, they found a green toothbrush and a lollipop. The toothbrush was soon confirmed to be Sarah's. But where was the little girl, and what had he done with her?
11-year-old Sarah Foxwell was wearing Christmas pajamas and a John Deere t-shirt when she went to bed Tuesday night. Her family reported her missing Wednesday morning. Wicomico County is now being scoured by teams of searchers and helicopters beating through frozen, swampy woods. And this man, 30-year-old Thomas James Legg, is in custody, charged with burglary and kidnapping. Investigators say he is not cooperating. And on Christmas Eve, they say they're not giving up the search.
We are not giving up hope. We will always maintain faith. We will find Sarah Foxwell. We have approximately 25 search teams comprised of 5 or 6 law enforcement, EMS, and fire personnel.
Thomas's cell phone data helped the police zero in on a specific area for their search. At this point, they were still hopeful that they would find the girl alive, and so they used every resource available to help speed the search. The search extended to Christmas Day, and instead of celebrating the holiday with their families, everyone in the community came out to help bring the little girl home. They prayed and hoped for a Christmas miracle, but the miracle never came. At least not in the way they were expecting. That afternoon at around 4 p.m., Sarah's dead body was found in a wooded area near Delaware state line.
At approximately 4 p.m. this afternoon, a ground search crew in the area of Melson Road, just west of Hamden Court, located the body of 11-year-old Sarah Foxwell.
She had been assaulted and murdered in the most brutal way, and she was found lying on her back with her hands stretched towards the sky and her fists clenched. Later, investigators revealed that the killer had tried to choke her down and drown her in a mud puddle, and then went ahead to light the body on fire in an effort to cover up his crime. Horrifyingly, an autopsy report later found that the girl had inhaled smoke from the fire, which means that she was still alive. Meanwhile, Thomas continued to maintain that he was innocent and had nothing to do with the brutal murder, despite the police having evidence against him. But when the police found Sarah's DNA on the clothes that he was still wearing, He caved and confessed to everything. Due to the brutal nature of the crime, the state of Maryland wanted to seek the death penalty against Thomas, but before the case went to trial, he took a plea deal and agreed to plead guilty to all the charges in exchange for his life. He got 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole.
Nothing can ever bring Sarah back to us, nor repair the big gaping hole in my heart, in our hearts. But knowing that this sociopath, this murderer, this child is now permanently off of our streets will at least bring some small measure of closure to this entire nightmare.
What do you think about this case? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and if you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more.